All right, everybody. I think we are on live and ready to go. I'm Josh Douglas. Introduce you to my good buddy, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro, Seth Feider.
What up, what up, what up?
And thank you for signing on to our webinar. This is our fifth one. We're going to keep them coming all winter long. And this one is Fall River Bassin. And despite a hectic traveling schedule for both of us, we found plenty of time to go run around, chase some green ones and some brown ones on some rivers.
Oh, yeah.
And
My favorite time of year to fish, by far.
It is mine too. Mine too. It's by far the best, except for up in these neck of the woods. What follows it is my least favorite time of year to go fishing. All right, we'll get things kicked off. I'm gonna drop the video off, and we'll turn it back on when we do questions at the end. But for now, I want to make sure you can see all your screens perfect. We good? All right. Here we go. Welcome to Fall River Bassin. We're going to talk about both smallmouth and largemouth bass. For the most part, I think we're going to talk about smallmouth. Yep. And you can still catch largemouth too on the type of stuff we're going to talk about. They definitely show up, and a lot of times they're big ones. But yeah, we'll definitely get into a little bit of both of them. Oops. All right. We want to urge everybody, as usual, to ask questions. We really take a lot of pride that we get a ton of questions towards the end, and we'll keep them going. As long as you're all asking them, we're going to keep answering them. It's some of our favorite parts, and also give us ideas for the ones in the future. You can type in questions. We're taking them all through this entire thing, and sometimes it's easier for us to see them if you just type in the question as it comes up or as it hits your mind, and you want to ask it, because then we get it and we can see it towards the end. But you can do it right here just following the arrow. And then you also see here, if you're looking from the mobile device, you get the little question mark right there, and you can put the question right into us.
Yep, we love questions, and keep them coming. We got some free prizes for.
We definitely got some free
some
prizes.
Question askers. So hit us with what you got, and we'll do our best to answer it.
Big thanks to these companies. I know for 2016, we're talking to a few more that want to get involved, but BioVex and Rapala, big for each one. BioVex big for me, Rapala for Seth. Pelican Products make some great stuff, and Outcast Tackle. We both use Outcast. And thanks again for the prize packs. All right, very first thing I want to talk about when we're getting into it. A lot of times I take a lot of the electronic stuff and talking about your sonar and all that. And really, we're talking about rivers. So, of course, we're using sonars all the time, but it's nothing like what I was just dealing with that Erie when I had 4 HDS-12s in my face. River, a lot of times you're using your eyes to see what you're looking at. Even when you're out fishing a little bit deeper water. However, your map is super important, and in the past it really never was, especially for rivers, and there's a good reason for it. Quick history on rivers is you'll always have your federal main navigable channels. They'll always be very well done because they use that to move up and down barges and stuff like that through the main channels. But anything else outside of those red and green buoys are suspect at best, and the reason for it is it costs a lot of money for survey crews. For any mapping company, whoever it be, it costs a lot of money for them to gain that kind of data and get that in there. And the problem with the river is it changes so much. I mean, I've literally fished a sandbar and then came back to it 2 months later, and the sandbar was there, but it was like 75 yards down. It had completely moved it with the current and all that different kind of stuff. So you have and you also have a lot of debris back there, a lot of things that can hurt you: logs, wing dams, closing dams, stumps, sandbars, you name it. It's kind of it can be at times, if you're amateur or even fish it every day, they can be a little bit of dangerous. So you want to really go with your best instinct when you're running some of those backwaters. But having mapping for these backwaters is hugely important when it comes to fishing, and it lets you know where some of the deep water is. And now Navionics has sonar charts. Sonar charts is awesome. It's user contributed data. And now you're starting to see a whole bunch of mapping come from some major river systems in their backwaters, areas that we never had before. We're having, and the best part about it is they get updated thousands of times a year. So as the contribution comes in, they keep adding it and refining the map. So it changes with the times. So every year your map should change with the conditions that you're facing. Here you can see the Mississippi, the Arkansas River, a very famous area of the Arkansas River, never had mapping before. I know the Alabama River's on here. Here's the Red River. I mean, I think that's the Jungle and the Little Jungle. Two hugely important areas of the Red River, never had mapping before, and now all that's accessible. Outside of that, Google Earth.
Google Earth. That's huge. That's going to show you a lot of stuff, especially some of these side channels and smaller cuts and stuff. You can, if the water's fairly clear, you can really see the drops in there, the sand drops, and the channels going through there. So this is a huge part. I'm definitely looking at Google Earth all the time. Anytime I'm on a river system, I'll use it to navigate off my phone too. And once I get in some backwaters and some stuff that isn't mapped yet, so like it, and like Josh said, those sandbars change every single year. So with the new sonar charts and the Google Earth, that'll help you keep updated on them. Yeah, every time the river floods out, that's a whole new deal there. So it's nice to have up to date information.
Yeah, and if you look up here in the upper left-hand corner, show the dates. That's another huge tip, because you can go to a river in April, and it's not going to look like nothing like what it's going to look like in October. They flood and they look a little differently. So a lot of times I like to play around with different dates and see what the river's looking like. We'll talk about the main river first. That's my favorite. I mean, I love fishing the main river. I like the backwaters too, but I was kind of taught how to fish rivers by one of the best ones in my book down there, Brent Hames, and I really like to fish the main river. Very exciting. A lot of smallmouth, definitely some largemouth, but a lot of smallmouth. First order of business: wing dams, or wing jetty in this case, but wing dams, they go up and down.
Definitely key features in the river. A lot of fish use these to feed on. They do hold fish year round, but this time of year in the fall, a lot of your fish are going to start to migrate to main channel stuff, getting ready for winter. And the main channel on most rivers is lined with these wing dams, and they're just great spots for fish to set up and feed on for sure. Definitely stuff you want to look at this time of year.
Definitely, they're obviously there to control current flow, which is another reason why these bass like to use these. Most of the time, you're talking about smallmouth. Every now and then, you get real big largemouth sit out on them, and they're all relative. You know, you get down to the Red River, you're talking about wing jetties and stuff like that, and obviously we're talking about largemouth. They definitely still use those. It's current spots, it's feeding spots, and great areas to catch bass. This is an ideal looking wing dam. I mean, they sometimes, depending on the water, they can be out of the water, they can be real deep, but I like it when they're looking just about like that right there. You're talking about a couple feet over the top of the wing dam, and you can do a lot of damage in that kind of a deal. And you can see them with your eyes. I mean, obviously, if you're out navigating, you want to refer to your Navionics map to watch out for them, because they can do some boat damage if you don't. But a lot of times, just reading the top of the water, you can see the kind of slick spot as it goes over that high spot, and then as it breaks off into the deeper water over the backside. But that right there, that looks beautiful to me when I show up. That's fall time on the Mississippi River. The leaves are coming out of the trees, and to see a wing dam like that, that looks awesome. Different areas to fish wing dams. I'm going to be honest, I love to fish the insides of them. A lot of times it's because I'm there during high water periods, though. And you're talking about the corners of them, the top side. There's so much current going that these fish just want to get behind something. They want to ambush stuff. And at the same time, they don't want to exhaust all their energy while they do it. Same type of deal, though, in low water. These fish will slide out more towards the ends and into the backs of them, and throwing a jerk bait across the top of that and pulling it all the way out over 20 feet, and all of a sudden you got 4-pound smallmouth on there. Any wing dam?
Yeah, when you get on some of these rivers, they got a ton of wing dams. If you want to save yourself some time, if you ever find one at the top of an island or the bottom of an island, that's a really key one you want to look at. Like this one right here is right off the top of an island. I would fish this one for sure. Probably hit this one too. And another good thing I like to see, if you see that break running real tight to shore, right where that wing dam meets the bank on the back side of it's a really key spot to look. Also, any irregularities you see in the wing dam, if there's like a little higher spot in there, this kind of shows I don't know if it's actually like that, but it shows a little cut through. If you see any breaks in the wing dam, those are really key areas. And then also the end of it's really good too. But it's worth, you can fish down them so quick, it's worth just running the whole length of them just to figure it out. But like I said, anytime you get in stretches where there's tons of them, the tops of these islands and the bottoms of these islands, that first and last wing dam are definitely really key ones to look at. Save you a little time, you don't have to fish quite as many of them.
And once you can definitely get in the front side of these and idle them this way out, and use your structure scan. Look at them, especially when we're talking about a little lower water and those fish are out. you can see where it might be silted in on one side and then the rocks exposed on another. That's going to be a really key spot. Or, maybe where they missed when they put the rocks in there to create the wing dam, and there's an extra little chunk of it off to the side. You start seeing those type spots, and you'll definitely know. But the top side of islands are great. And another one I really like are a wing dam all by itself, kind of like a dock by itself. If you find a wing dam, they can be small. It doesn't have to be one of these big ones. On an Avionics map, it might only come to like, a quarter or a third of the way. And it's just one little tiny little wing jetty or wing dam they put off on the side. And sometimes that's where I can catch some of my bigger fish.
Yeah. Another good thing I want to point out, it seems like certain sections of the river will be more productive than others. So I might jump in and fish 2 or 3 wing dams in a certain section, and then run up, a mile or 2 miles and fish a couple more. And there will definitely be any given time, there will be a certain specific stretch of river that's holding fish more than the rest of it. So like I say, you do not have to fish every wing dam to really figure out what's going on with them. I like to hit a few and then make a move a little ways upriver or downriver and hit a few again, and keep doing that.
And before we get going anymore, I'm a little bit nervous, Seth. I got to be honest with you, because you've spent more time fishing, but maybe Bree would help out. Like in the office when the boss is there, when you're doing your presentation, we just had Chad Smith from Winona State walk into the room during the webinar, a true little river rat.
We got a rat in the house.
We got a rat here judging us while we're doing this. It's kind of making me a little nervous, but we'll keep her going anyway. All right, man, here's one of my screenshots. You guys know I love screenshots. We got a wing dam. Current flow is coming from left to right. And you can just see how the bait fish, seeing fish around them and stuff is going to get a little tough just because of all the rock and all that and the current and moving. You're not necessarily looking for the fish all the time, but you can see the bait. And the bait want to sit exactly where everything else wants to sit and be right in the backside of that wing dam where they can look up and just ambush stuff as it comes across. Essentially, just to put this into bigger, how I was taught is a great thing. A lot of people can relate to fishing smaller rivers at some points or streams, whether you're a fly fisherman or just a smallie, fisherman out in waders. And you're going to look for a big boulder that has an eddy behind it, and then you're going to throw a tube in there and you're going to catch a smallmouth. And that's how it works in smaller rivers. Well, when you get to these big major rivers, it's all relative. It's all the same. A wing dam is just, all that is your boulder. It's your really big, giant, long boulder on a lot bigger scale.
Current break.
And it's a current break, exactly. And it gives those fish a place to not exhaust all their energy and still come out and get the bait as they come by. Secondary channels, those definitely relate to the main river. They're very important, both pre-spawns, post-spawn, and everything else in between. Cut banks, you can see this illustration right here. Bree worked so hard on last night. Cut banks are hugely important. A lot of times, I wanted to find a couple. I didn't get to that, but if you look on a Google map, if you look on like Google Earth or any of those types of things, and you're familiar with the river, a lot of times it's going to be your outside bend of a creek channel or a river channel. But a lot of times on a secondary channel, it's going to be your outside bend. The inside bend will get silted in, and your outside bend, that current is constantly cutting across that bank, and it's eroding underneath. And if you can see this illustration, you can imagine how bass can just stack up underneath there and ambush anything and everything they want as it comes by. And a lot of times you can also kind of watch the current on the front of it, how it's either a back eddy or an eddy, and you can find some of those push areas where the current's not nearly as bad, and those fish will really stack into those cut banks. Sand drops. Sand drops are awesome. Love fishing sand drops everywhere, every chance I can get. You can see in these illustrations, it's 2 different sand drops. One of them is more of a point that's coming straight out, and you got 2 channels, one cutting from here and one cutting across this side. It's got a little bit of it's actually got a drop on all sides of it. This one, the current's coming out this way, and this is the dominant creek channel right here. The top one's a dominant creek channel. The bottom one is going to be your not dominant one, because this one stays nice and cut, nice and shallow through there, and it pushes all the stuff up into this one. And this is an ideal what a sand drop looks like. You can actually use Google Earth too on the right time of years and find sand drops. I mean, you can see them.
Yep, definitely.
Go back.
Yeah. This is this and wing dams are by far my two favorite types of structure to fish in the fall for smallmouth. Typically, like early fall, sand drops are better, and wing dams are typically better later in the fall. In the sand drops, you don't usually find the numbers that you will on wing dams, but there'll be a wolf pack of
Big.
3 or 4 big smallmouth on these spots, and these are just if you can find these and fish them right, it's real easy. Like I said, most of them you can see off Google Earth or when you're driving around the river finding these. Pretty easy. It's all super visual stuff, and it's a really shallow deal actually. Don't be afraid. Throw your bait up in 6 inches of water. Some giant smallmouths will sit really shallow on these sand drops, and yeah, some of the biggest smallmouths I've caught out of the river have come off this type of stuff.
Yeah, and I'd put this one up underneath the secondary channels, but mind you, something that blew my mind. I mean, you get on the right kind of sand drop. I don't care how far back you are off the river, there can be smallmouth loaded on that thing still. So don't, I put it under that because they're easier to find in those areas. But there's current all throughout an entire river system, and current's what's going to make a sand drop and make them form like that. And you can be way back in some backwaters or out in the main river and still find a good sand drop.
Yep. Good places to look for these are going to be tail ends of islands on the river. Anywhere like a side channel meets a main channel is a really good spot to look. And like Josh said, don't the tops. You get a lot of backwater lakes off the side of the main channel, and the very tops of them, where all the little creeks and stuff come through, you'll get those little sand drops. So even you might be way up in a backwater, but you might still be able to catch some big smallmouth there as long as you got some flow coming over the top of them.
And just like this, the flow is going to come right over the top of the drop. It's going to be real skinny up on top. It's a perfect illustration of a sand drop. And those fish, again, just like a wing dam, it gives them a current break, something to get behind, and an ambush prey that comes over. They exhaust zero energy, and at the same time, they can sit there all day. And it funnels them in. Here's looking at Navionics Map from their web app. I mean, this is some key areas circled here. You got your current flow going from north to south. But any of these circle areas, these are all key. I mean, you can even go back into here. Not much mapping there for me to really know if there's any depth. But any of these areas right here will have the potential of holding a good current, a good sand drop on them, good current spots. Here's a great illustration. This is actually out in front of one of those pictures that I just took. You got 2 rivers coming in. The one on the left there was definitely the dominant one. Pushed the current in through and created that nice sand drop right out in front. Not my best screenshot in the entire world, but it was one that I had captured quick right as I was sitting the boat back down, so everything came into play. But you can see all the fish and all the bait that comes in on the backside of one of these drops. I'm starting to come up from deeper water into the top of the drop, and you can see all the bait and stuff that loads in back there. Because just like the bass, I mean, all the bait wants to be back in there too, because they're not fighting to try to wasting all their energy all the time out in the current, and that's a big one. Anything that's going to break the current, I don't think we can say that enough through this entire webinar. I mean, from laydowns to sand drops to it all, that's a big deal. Let's get down to it. Some of the fishing stuff. For some of the main river drops, things of that, wing dams, all that kind of stuff. These are my go-tos. I mean, if I'm going to go fish a river tomorrow, these are the ones that are going to be on my deck right before I go. First one is the Biovex Joint Bait 110, 142, and the Biovex Space 70 Popper. Top water is awesome, especially fall. I mean, it's awesome all the time, but like really good right now. I might not ever put those baits down and just have a time doing it. The joint bait skitters right across the top, kind of like a wake bait, stays right on the top, gives it more of a S pattern as it runs across. When it's slick, there's nothing beats it. A popper, a bone popper like that. If you fish the river in the fall and you don't have a bone popper in your boat, you're really missing the boat. The jerk baits, I put 2 different colors on because one thing we'll talk about a little bit with backwaters, but one thing that's always so important, you just can't control it so much in the main river, is going to be your water clarity. And water clarity changes so dramatically all the time that here you got more of your minnowy type bait, and up here you got more of your chartreuse style on the Stay 80 jerkbait. When the water's dirtier, I'm going to go to either more of a white, like a bone color, or that chartreuse color. And when the water's clear, I'm going to go to this minnow, because it can get gin clear one day and a couple days later be dirty muddy depending on what's going on. Texas rig beaver, lightweight, light range tungsten. I will use that absolutely everywhere. You'll see that in my other slide for largemouth. That's just a killer on the river. And Biovex stand gun spinnerbait. I mean, they're eating shad, they're eating bait this time of year. It's probably the best time of year to catch a big one. Matter of fact, I did catch a few big ones the other day on the old stand gun.
You did.
Feider.
Okay, here's my lineup. Just river fishing in general. I love to cover water, really fast. These fish are super aggressive in nature. You can just keep pounding areas with moving baits and running and gunning. You don't have to grind out and pull out drop shots and little stuff like that to know if there's any fish there. Few of the baits I like to fish, Rapala Rip and Wrap. I love yo-yoing a rattle bait on wing dams and sand drops as well. X-Prop, that's a killer topwater bait. It's a prop bait. I like to rip it a couple times hard and kind of let it sit there on those wing dams. Really great. Topwater is just an awesome way to catch smallmouths. And another thing this time of year, you got a lot of minnows coming up, shad coming up. They really get turned on to minnows more than they've been eating, you know, crawdads or small panfish and stuff like that. You're dealing with a lot of shad and shiners this time of year that they really get on. Jerkbait, by far my favorite way to catch them on the wing dams. And I just learned a trick the other day when I was down there. One of the things I really like, I always kind of fished wing dams from downstream up. And I went out there the other day with a friend of mine. He kind of showed me the way he fishes them. He'll sit in the front of the wing dam, throw the jerk bait back towards the wing dam, and that way you can kind of keep jerking it and keeping it in the same place, and the smallmouths just can't stand it. They jump all over it. A square bill and a swim bait. Like I said, these are all minnow type baits, stuff I can cover a ton of water with. And I'm basically just using them varying on the depth. And I'll go through all my baits on any given spot that has fish, but you can usually go down it quick with a top water and a jerk bait and figure out if there's anything on those wing dams or sand drops. But I'll rotate through all of them if I do find some fish on any one of those particular spots. But like I said, they're all minnow type baits and stuff I can cover a lot of water with. I'll just use, you know, different ones based on the depth I'm fishing. You know, if I'm fishing them sand drops real shallow, foot or less, that top water's hard to beat. And then once you get out on the fronts and the backs of the deeper wing dams, you know, I'll throw that deep dive and jerk bait or that rip and wrap and just yo-yo it off the bottom. But all stuff I can cover a lot of water with. And like I said, they're really aggressive this time of year. If you make a quick pass down a wing dam or a sand drop and don't get a bite, there's probably nothing there.
But if you get one, I'm
gonna grind them out and beat them up.
And one thing I want to say too, I am a dragger and a flipper and a finesse fisherman, true and true. I love being on the bottom when I'm fishing. But when I'll never forget the day. It was one of the best days of fishing in my life when I got to go down and fish a river stretch with Brent Hames. And I'm not in the place to say what he was throwing, but I'll tell you what I tried to do was drag stuff across these wing dams. Stuff, you know, my mentality at the time was, you know, if they're there, that's how you're going to really catch them. But he was kicking my butt. I mean, I don't know if I caught a bass to his first 4 or 5 before I finally started picking up reaction baits and started throwing those. And that's what they're there for. I mean, it can be 2 feet of water, but it was weird. They would not look down for it. They were only looking up. And as soon as I made the changes, then things started to come together. Backwater. You can see Feider there at the big old frogfish. You can throw a lot of frogs on the river. Using your Navionics map, when you're looking at river, you can see the top side. You got a whole bunch of river. Your backwater, we're talking about, these are big lakes on their own, way in the back. They're still current orientated. There's definitely still current back there, but these are big backwater areas, not your secondary channels. None of that. Getting way back to the backwaters. Keys to productive backwater areas are going to be 3 things mainly: current, water clarity, and your vegetation types. Tributaries. One thing I like to always do before I get to a stretch of river, let's say I know I'm going to be fishing pool X, Y, and Z. I'm going to go through those pools and I'm going to play with the different dates up here in the top left from Google Earth. And I'm going to look at different areas and try to figure out which tributaries bring clean water and which tributaries bring dirty water. Even I was just at Table Rock Lake, which those are reservoirs, but they're still rivers on a grand scale of things. And some of them come from the Ozark Mountains. They bring in clear water. Other of them are coming in from like Kansas and Illinois or wherever, and it's farmland and it's bringing in them dirty water. So you got to kind of really watch that. And then a river, you can see right here. This is just something that I found on a pool. River's flooded. We're talking about May, so it's definitely high water, spring rains and stuff. All melting snow is coming through, so the river's flooded. But you can see this little river, this tributary right here is running clean. And I'm going to know that that's running clean. Now, I still see that the river's overpowered, but sometimes you'll see where there'll actually be like a mud line, and it'll affect everything on this side of the water is going to be, on the north side here is going to be dirty, and everything down here is going to be clean. So watching those tributaries and looking on Google Earth and trying to figure that out of which ones are going to run cleaner during, especially this is the easy way to do it. Look at it, when everything's flooded and find which ones run clean, and then you're going to know that definitely even come September or something, that's going to be a cleaner one if you start getting, a lot of rain, stuff like that. Vegetation. When you're in backwaters, vegetation filters water like crazy, turns dirty water clean. One of the big, this goes everywhere. From Virginia at the James River, I remember using Google Earth to try to find where the clean water was. And lo and behold, it's always because vegetation's way up there, and it keeps it clean, filters it out. You can see, this ain't the best description of it because the river looks like it's still running pretty clean. But if you look back here, way back onto that lake,
look for that black water.
Yeah, you got that really clean water up there. It's got coontail and all the right stuff back in there to filter out that water. And again, it just comes to mapping. So much of this stuff comes to looking at your Google Earth maps, your Navionics maps, and once you figure out an area that you want to fish, let's say here, then try to lean on that Navionics map, figure out a way to get back there. But mind you, another thing, I got pictures of both Seth and I with stuck on sand, blowing out water, trying to get off of a flat. I can't tell you how much a river system is just going out and fishing, moving water, trying to push your boat off of a sand flat, trying to get over this hump, trying to get here, trying to get there down this channel. Carry a saw with you. Do whatever you got to do to try to get into some areas because it can be really rewarding if you do. Mixed vegetation. When you're back in these waters, I think anywhere you fish, Seth, vegetation-wise, try to find mixed vegetation. A lot of times, again, one thing I like about it, it's kind of like fishing Florida. You get a little bit harder bottoms depending on what kind of vegetation it is you're looking. If you're around Arrowhead, stuff like that. But lily pads hold a lot of fish. Coontail is a big one, and the reason why coontail is so good is coontail filters dirty water probably better than them all. Coontail milfoil, they filter the water, they make it real clean in a quick hurry. Everything you'll see them. Sometimes the vegetation will look disgustingly gross, but that's because it's just hanging on to all that dirty water and filtering it out and making it all clear on the inside. Duckweed. I love duckweed. Number one, duckweed is good for two things. One, it gives fish a spot to get under, just like anything else. Blocks out the sun, makes it a little darker. But I like it because it shows me current really, really well. Current will push duckweed into areas where there isn't a lot of current. And that's why you end up, you can throw a frog, you can do all kinds of stuff. But just idling around your favorite river stretch, and you start looking around in there, and you can see blowholes like this where somebody got their frog eaten. And there ain't nothing better when you leave and you got about 10 or 12 of those punch holes in your duckweed flat.
Yeah.
Setups. Power fishing big time. A lot of braid. You can see in the upper left hand corner, I got my beaver on there still. You got a lot of wood, a lot of stumps, stuff like that. Cut banks to flip. RTX, Outcast RTX jig. Love to do some flipping in the pads. Swim jig. I think a swim jig might have been invented on some of these stretches of rivers that we fish a bunch. It's good all times of years. I throw the Outcast quite a bit. And I've actually got the opportunity to throw this Terminator walking frog a little bit, hanging out with Feider here. with the Rapala team, and that's a sweet frog all the way around. It walks so good. It's long. It's heavy. Realistic. It's a winner. And best yet, it's very flexible. It's fish. If they got it, you got them. That's just how it goes.
Yep. Here's my setup. This is definitely geared toward the fall. I like to flip a jig a lot more than say a Texas rig this time of year. Swim jig, it's just needs to be on the deck of your boat at all times. Excuse me. Anytime you're on the river. And a frog, same deal. I got Terminator popping frog on here, Outcast juice jig, and an Outcast swim jig. But another thing that not so much backwater this time of year I like to look for is big trees, big isolated trees on the main river is a really great spot to get a kicker largemouth. They still want a little bit of flow too, not as much as the smallmouth do, but as the water starts to drop this time of year, a lot of them backwaters start kind of drying up on you, and you'll find some big largemouths pushing their way out to the main river, and flipping a jig on those giant isolated main river trees is an awesome way to catch a big largemouth this time of year.
Let me ask you a question, can I? Is this a popping frog?
That is.
When you use the popping frog over the regular frog?
Popping frog I prefer in a little bit more open water, kind of broken up stuff. Even duckweed too, something where I can actually walk my bait. Where the regular walking frog, I prefer that for like super heavy cover. Big thick pads and stuff like that. But that popping frog, I'm gonna skip that around, willow trees and light duckweed and stuff that's a little more open where I can walk that frog a lot more. And the walking frogs, it's a little bit heavier. I can throw it a lot further. So if they get way back in the thick stuff where your frog can't really walk anyways, that's where I'll throw that walking frog a little more than the popping frog.
Yeah, and again, we discussed a popper on the river is a no-brainer, and whether you're out in the main river throwing like an actual popper style bait with trebles, or you need this back in the backwaters, they're looking up. I mean, you can right now go to the river and maybe just throw top water if you want all day long, if that's your deal.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just anytime fish are shallow, top water is a good bait to catch them on.
Again, this one, and like all of ours, will be available to watch on YouTube. Here's a list of the ones we've done so far. This is our 5th one, and there's a link to be able to get to the YouTube page. Soon we'll have these both up on our websites and all that kind of stuff. The off season's approaching. And we're gonna really get this thing mainstreamed up for 2016. Make it accessible for everybody. But for right now, that's how you can get to all of our old ones. And let's talk about our next one. Being that it's winter where we're from, not like we're going to stop fishing much. It is hunting season, so we might take a month.
Yeah, I'm going to kill some stuff.
Yep. And then after that, then we'll be in Florida roughly sometime in January. It's where the seasons always start, and it's a good way for a couple guys from Minnesota to get down there and start punching some mats and get back in the groove of things. But our next one will be November 17th, and it's everything drop shotting 101. I mean, we're going to break also the big guns here.
Yeah,
what we're using,
everything.
Line,
baits, hooks, knots, leaders,
electronic
knots,
settings, you name it.
Catching them off your graph.
You can see in this one, there's not even a fish there. That's just how cocky I was getting with my deal. That's all that is my bait and the weight. Going up and down, up and down, up and down. We're going to get into all those settings. That's probably the number one question I get. And even that's in shallow water right there. So number one question I get right there is when I'm doing electronics training is how do I see fish and drop down to them. So we're going to get into all that. Definitely check it out. And
the next few seminars we do are going to be all technique specific stuff, just giving you the rundown from every little detail of everything about a certain technique. So if there's anything you guys want to see, hit us up with an email or a Facebook message, whatever we get the most for, we'll go over that. So
definitely
let us know what you want to know about.
I'm sure come February, March, we might be talking everything punching mats.
Yeah, probably, but we'll get a couple in there. So throw some ideas, whatever you want to hear about, and maybe we'll do a combo or something.
All right, we'd like to just thank Cycle Bass Monkey, Bass East, Dr. Sonar. They've always been in our corner promoting our stuff, trying to get it out there so people can log on and get this great information. We really try not to hold nothing back, and we'll start getting to the questions. And if you just hold on 1 second, we just got to get the questions loaded up. We'll get to them. So right now, anything you got, bring them to us. Chris, how about swim jigs and jigs? Well, we discussed a little bit of that. Swim jigs were born on the river. They work everywhere, but they are a killer on the river for whatever reason. You can throw them anywhere; they'll eat it. Again, I think it's current orientated. You know, a lot of it is. You know, I think the quarter ounce jig was the big one that was first. Kind of really made its name on the river, and a lot of that, then lighter weight stuff, it kind of got better current. It does better in the current, I should say, and you can throw it out there. And a swim jig is killer. A jig, like Seth said, this time of year, I definitely like to go to a jig. Spring and summer, I like Texas rigs a lot, but regular jig this time of year in the fall, awesome bait. When you stop throwing frogs.
I guess when they stop eating it, fish in the fall, water temperature wise, can get colder in the fall, and they'll still hit a top water than they will in the spring. Say, in the spring, 68 degrees is about as soon as you'll get a top water bite. And in the fall, I feel like you can catch fish on top water. I mean, even into the high 40s, especially for smallmouth. Maybe that largemouth deal will die kind of, when it gets down to 50 or so. But I'm just gonna keep throwing them until they quit eating it. Like I said, anytime the fish on the river will get really shallow a lot of their life. I mean, anytime a fish is in 2 foot or less, a top water is a great option for them. But at some point in time, it will get too cold where they quit eating them. But in the fall, that might be down into the 40s. Where, like I said, in the spring, it's usually got to be at least in the mid 60s before any topwater bite really starts.
Right on. And one thing too with the frogs, remember frogs like a buzzbait all around the country. I mean, sometimes your biggest fish are the first to eat it. Your biggest fish are also the last to keep eating it. So the numbers might go down, but if you're still getting a big bite on it later in the year, I'd definitely keep throwing it. Brian asked, tomorrow is my first trip to the Rum River. Any bait tips for that type of smaller river? Well, generally we're not able to really get. We get a lot of these questions, the lakes we don't know, but I happen to know the rum really, really well, especially this time of year. Jerk bait's going to be killer. A tube is going to work really, really good. A lot of cut banks, a lot of good, the outside bends of some of those places, really good. What else?
Yeah, well, one thing I want to go over, we kind of missed on this seminar, and it's probably like the best peak bite all year on these little rivers. The Rum River's one of them. Some upper stretches of the Mississippi. I'm sure there's little rivers like this all over
any of the Mississippi,
all over the country. Even the St. Croix. A lot of these fish, spring and summer, they'll run so far up the river you can't get to them in a regular bass boat. On these smaller rivers, there's sand and stuff you just cannot get over foot deep for miles. And these fish spend all their spring and summer up there. And as the water temp starts to cool, these fish will migrate down river towards these little bit deeper holes. Sometimes there's a dam right in front of the dam. There'll be a deeper stretch of river that's really good and gets really loaded up. And it's a really, really hot bite this time of year. It's my favorite thing to do is run around on these little rivers and, fish the bottom couple miles of them. A ton of these fish are migrating towards these things.
Put on the camera, but
no.
So, we're back on. We're good? I think so. Can you see us, Chad?
What? Oh, I'm not looking at my.
Oh. Thanks, dude.
Good job, Chad. Come on, man. All right. Absolutely, they get down there. That's where your deeper water is. They follow that cold water, trying to find warmer water. They hit a dam. It's deep. They winter there.
Yeah, it's a super peak bite. This time of year, there's giant smallmouth that live up in basically unfishable water all summer long, and they migrate down to these dams or deeper winter pools in the fall as the water temp starts to drop, and that's some of the best fishing you're gonna have all year. That's, in my opinion, my favorite thing to do is fish these little rivers late in the fall. And everybody's out duck hunting, and it's just an awesome time to just load up on big brown ones.
It's all. We're gonna go do it tomorrow.
Yes, we are.
Definitely too about the rum and a lot of these too. If the water hasn't dropped yet, don't be afraid to get up and flip in the trees and stuff. You can really actually power fish and fish like fish for largemouth. Chase asks, do you trim your legs on the frog or keep them as is?
I personally trim them down quite a lot. Of these frogs nowadays come with really long legs
Super
on
long.
them, which is good because you can trim them down to the size you want them better than them coming too short. I don't know how much difference it makes. I do shorten it up a bit just to, make it a smaller target, I guess. Put them more on the bait where the hook is, but then it'll help you walk a little bit better too with shorter legs, I think.
Yeah, and I'll say something about this new Terminator one too. This is no spot. I have nothing to do with anything over there. The way they made that bait is actually the first frog that I've seen that they're making the bait more geared towards walking than having you have to cut your tails. Like it's long, it's slender, the backside's good. I don't know if you really got to play it that much at all. That bait looks like that bait walks right out of the box.
It does.
Yeah, Chad, good question, man. Do you guys ever fish clam and shell beds? Yes, and I should have really got into that more. Now that's brought to my attention. Shell beds are huge, and shell beds can be way in the backwaters too, because there's always current, and they attract fish really well.
They get blown in on a lot of softer bottoms. Anywhere the current really runs into a place, you're gonna find shell. And I don't know if I've thought about this talked about this a few times. I don't know how much importance the shell is. It's a little bit harder bottom than most places on the river, but it's kind of like the shell gets piled into the same places the current really runs into. So those are just gonna be prime feeding areas, anyways. And like I said, I don't know. There's definitely good spots that got shell on them. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if it's more because that's where the current piles into, or if that's because where the shells are.
Ron, how does your lure selection change with the different seasons for the rivers?
It's not going to change a lot for me. Like I said before, fish on the rivers tend to be pretty aggressive. So anytime I'm going to a river, I'm just gonna cover a lot of water with moving baits. If it's a tournament and I find some fish, I'll sit down and go through it with some slower moving baits. But I'm pretty much covering water as fast as I can anytime I'm on the river.
Yep, they're current orientated. And one thing I will say about that though, it seems like in the fall I do a lot better with white colored tackle. For whatever reason, them pearl colors or those bone colors, the white swim jigs and stuff. Really, and we're early in the year, I might use more like your June bugs and your bluegill style imitators. But it seems come fall, you want to really start looking at that white color. They're bait orientated. Yeah, those shad are getting ready to die.
The shad. See, the thing is with the shad in the river, they stay really deep, spring and summer, and in the fall they'll come up into the shallows. So they become just a major forage for all the fish on the river this time of year. Anywhere you do have shad, but basically anywhere, especially with smallmouth, a lot of the places I've been, they eat a lot of crawdads in the spring, and sometime August, September, they really get on minnows hard. I don't know if it's just because they're more prevalent, but it becomes a lot more major forage for them this time of year.
Chad, around here, fish love frogs. Where's the best place to throw them in the river, popper or not?
I think we went over that a little bit.
I think we covered that pretty good.
If you see duckweed, you need to throw a frog in it. That just goes without saying. Around pads and stuff, I like skipping them under overhanging trees and stuff like that too. And like I said, I throw the popper in a little bit more open water, and the regular walking frog kind of way back in the stuff.
Josh is asking, fishing line, is there a better time for braid or fluoro? I'll tell you, it's all right. I like braid to like a monofilament leader or something for my top water baits. Obviously for my frog, I'm throwing braid. Flipping, I'm throwing braid. If it's really, really clean water and I feel like they're getting pressured, then I might go to a fluorocarbon leader. Other than that, when I'm flipping wood and stuff or pitching to wood with my Texas rig beaver, I'm using probably fluorocarbon, 15-pound fluorocarbon, or roughly right around 12 to 17, we should say, for the most part.
Yeah, that's going to matter more for me on what I'm actually doing more so than water clarity or anything like that. If I'm fishing heavy grass, I really like braid. Top waters, I like braid. Wood and rock, I prefer fluorocarbon. Braid will actually cost you a few fish and some wood on some bad scenarios, but yeah, and most of my moving baits, I'm throwing a fluorocarbon, spinner baits, crankbaits, jerk baits, stuff like that.
Andy says November 17th. Damn, I'll be out. I need the copy. Definitely, please. Again, check our, anything that doesn't, we love for you to come on live. We give away prizes for those that come on live. But again, all these will be out there for everyone to grab. Fred, how late into the season can you fish these fall river patterns?
A long time. We're in Minnesota here. I'd say probably all the way through November, you're gonna have a really good smallmouth bite on the river. The largemouth stuff kind of gets a little touch and go, usually after mid to late October. You can still catch some good fish on, get them warm afternoons. But smallmouths, definitely all the way through November. I mean, we even got some rivers up here. We go out in the middle of the winter and catch them out. The fish are there and they're biting. They get really stacked up this time of year. Great time of year to whack on them. And I mean that smallmouth bites pretty much year round as long as you can fish for them.
Yeah, I mean, really, to be honest, the fish will get such big concentrations. It could get better and better all through winter.
Yeah.
I think it's more just you trying to get to the fish up in these next.
Yeah, and trying to put up with the conditions.
We need break.
Results.
Sorry, I can't get to them. I can't read them. I don't want to slide it that way. Sorry, guys.
Technical difficulties.
We need that slid over so I can read it. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. All right, we're back. What we got here? Chad says, Chad Eddings, Seth, amazing sack of smallies you posted on Facebook.
Thanks.
Sure that doesn't hurt your feelings none.
No, they're pretty nice.
I talked to him yesterday, and I can tell you the little kid in him was out the other day.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
You just sorry, got him late, Rob. Good. Neither of you really mentioned using crankbaits. Do you find that hard and soft swim baits are better in the river than a crank? No, actually, I mean a crankbait is a good call. A crankbait will definitely catch them.
Yeah.
Especially, I failed to mention that on the Rum River, they really like crankbaits if you get on the right kind of spot. But your big river systems, especially now if we go back, we start talking like the Red River and stuff. When I talk about eddies, I'm sorry, wing jetties. When they come out, man, the ends of those jetties is about the only thing you can throw as a crankbait, and it'll get choked every time. So
yeah, I had a square bill on there.
Yeah,
I like going down the riprap with a crankbait, especially earlier in the year. But going over the tops of the wing dams, I usually fish like a jerkbait or a topwater or a rattle trap bait more than I fish a crankbait. But it's another great bait. You can cover a ton of water with it. It's definitely one you should have on the deck.
All right. And then I got asked, what kind of conditioner does Seth use for his beautiful flowing locks of hair? It really looks great tonight. Very healthy.
Yeah, that's just a lot of wind and grease.
I think everyone can go for me. He asked us how his hair looked before we got on this webinar.
I don't know why you got to put me on blast like that. Whatever, you're just hating.
No, not hating. Not hating.
Sounds like it.
Have you ever or would you consider fishing the smallies at Rainy Lake boundary waters?
I've never been up there.
Yeah,
sounds like fun. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about fishing out of a canoe. If I can put my bass boat in there, I'm all about it.
Are you quartering your presentation on a wing dam or straight downstream, upstream? Good question. Really good question. Actually, when the water is higher, a lot of times I'm quartering and I'm throwing it into like the corner and trying to work it down the front of it, down the back of it. As the water starts to drop and those fish start to pull out, then a lot of times I like to get on the back side of it and cast to the front side of it and bring it across. Except for, is that how we look right now?
I think we're frozen. It looks stupid too.
straight down.
I got my mouth half open.
So yeah, except the ends of the wing dams too. You know, a lot of rock just kind of laying down there. So I like to really throw something light in there if I'm fishing the bottom, or a Carolina rig, throw it in there and just kind of drag it down with the current. Again, a Carolina rig we never touched on is an awesome river bait.
Yeah.
Anything, and that's why I was saying about light baits on a Texas rig. Anything that the current wants to move stuff. So a lot of times your heavier stuff doesn't always work, and they don't always like a hopping presentation. They like it like dragging and like it moving with the current. Maybe it looks more realistic to them or whatever. But a Carolina rig is a killer bait. I just don't. I think we were probably both too lazy to rig one up for the pitcher. Otherwise, it would have been on there. I'm pretty sure of it. What is your favorite river colors? I talked about bone. I love bone in whites in the fall.
Yep. Anytime with my colors, I keep it pretty basic. I'm gonna have, you know, a black blue variation, a green pumpkin variation, and then, you know, some kind of minnow variation. Those three will pretty much get you through any scenario you need to. I fish, you know, black blue in real dirty water early in the year, green pumpkin in a little bit clearer water earlier in the year, and I go to a lot to whites in the fall, or shad color baits. But yeah, another thing, the river's always gonna seem to have a little bit of dirtiness to it or whatever. But that green pumpkin with some sort of flake in it, it catches them even when that water's pretty dirty. Those fish will live in that stuff. They can see a lot better than we give them credit for. You know, I've done really well in places with, you know, a foot of visibility or less, still on green pumpkin.
Yeah, and I'll pay homage to the guy sitting next to me too. I mean, we've learned a lot from each other fishing over the years and stuff. But from day one, man, like a green pumpkin candy-ish style bait is killer on the river.
Christmas tree.
Yeah, if you're gonna really sell it out like that, it would be Christmas tree. But any of them kind of baits, it's a good all around from like clear water to their dirty water. They just really like that color when you're fishing the river. And a Christmas pumpkin beaver is something that I always have on the deck of my boat whenever I'm fishing down there. What areas do you target with top water on the river during the fall? Well, your wing dams,
sand drops. Sand drops are killer on top water just because those fish, it's so shallow on them. And also frog anytime you're fishing largemouth.
Shale beds in the backs are really good. I mean, I got my butt kicked by a cone angler one time. I was fishing the shell bed with a Carolina rig. He was throwing like a spook or something on top of it, and largemouth. And it was a smallie spot, I thought, and all of a sudden, I mean, dude put in like 3 for like 12 pounds.
Yeah, they'll get mixed up this time of year. But like I said before, anytime them fish are sitting in 2 foot or less at top water, it's definitely gonna be a player. One of your main options.
Someone wants to know what's the story of Seth Chipped Tooth. He'll tell it to you, but let me tell you one thing. I do not. When his tooth is chipped, I do not want to fish a tournament with him. Let it be fixed, and I'll fish against him. But that's a good luck charm.
It might be.
It is getting good luck.
I chipped it like a long time ago, and I was like 10 years old, and they patched it, and it was awesome forever. And then I was at St. Clair. I was ripping open a bag of plastic worms. It broke off. Went to the dentist. He fixed it again. I tried biting some string with it, and it broke off. I went to the dentist again. He fixed it. I took a bite out of a hoagie and it broke off.
A hoagie?
A hoagie.
You were there. Hoagie guy.
You were sitting right next to me.
Right next to me.
Right next to me, a gas station hoagie. Broke my tooth off the last time. So I might just let her buck.
Let her roll. 2016 Elites.
Watch out.
His girlfriend's shaking his head at him.
What?
Why?
It's fucking sexy.
We'll just start calling you. We'll start introducing you as Lloyd.
Okay, whatever.
Lloyd. Every time.
Whatever.
Okay. That's a good one. Sometimes we get some good jokes that come through here too.
Yeah, you're funny. Who was that?
Homer.
No.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. Jason Homer, you're funny. I hope you're wearing pants. You told me you weren't going to wear any before the
Great question
webinar.
Here, dude. If you could only have one rod and use run rod technique for fall rivers, What would it be and why?
Probably
Go ahead. I'll give you first crack.
gonna take a spinner bug.
Spinnerbait?
Man, throw a spinner bug. I can fish it in a foot. I can fish it in 20 feet. Cover a lot of water with it. The top water stuff's only good if they're fairly shallow, and a lot of your diving baits, you got to be the right depth at them for that. So yeah, either a spinnerbait or a swim jig's probably if I got one.
Swim jig's a good one too. God,
Yeah,
now you're giving me more ideas. I was gonna
That's
go.
right, yeah.
I really like my BioVex spinnerbait when it comes to river fishing, but he took the spinner bug. I'm gonna go with Texas rig beaver. I love it, man. I can fish. I can fish a lot of stuff. Well, you already covered that, the best reaction one out there. Sure. I'm gonna go with something to flip with, and you get up on some cut bank and some of those little wing dams and stuff, and that bait will. It's got to be light though, 3/16, quarter, something like that. But great bait. Tube too. We didn't talk much about tubes.
Tube's pretty strong.
Smallmouth eat tubes from one end of the country to the other. What lures for cut banks? That's a good question. I definitely like the beaver.
Yeah, that's a flipping deal for me if they're on a cut bank. You can run stuff down them, but pitching a jig or a Texas rig.
I'll actually share a quick story. A good buddy of mine and his tournament partner were fishing a tournament on the river, and one was flipping a tube, one was flipping a beaver, and they both pitched to like some undercut bank. And they both set the hook, and they're fighting, and they both get the fish in, and it's a 4.5 pound largemouth with their tube and their beaver in the same fish's mouth. They didn't realize it until they got it in.
Oh, yeah.
But
fish on the river bite.
It comes through, and they just grab them both. And a lot of times that's the thing. You're fishing areas that are their feeding stations.
Oh, yeah.
So you can get away with fishing a lot of times your strength, too. So don't be afraid of doing whatever it is that you like throwing jerk bait. Keep it in your hand, man. With the jerk bait.
They're biting somewhere.
The new joint bait, twitch and kill or steady retrieve. I've done a little bit of both. Steady retrieve seems to really knock their lights out for whatever reason. And the twitch and kill deal works. I've done that around like boat docks, the end of jetties, but for the most part, I keep wanting to twitch and kill it a bunch, but just that steady roll with that joint bait, and that's like a buzz bait or anything else. They just want to come up from behind it and grab it. It's something about when something flows through. Another one of our good buddies just showed up, Andy Young, kind of taught me that deal.
What's up, Andy?
There's something about a bait that floats when you're talking about shallow water and stuff like that. When it flows through really confidently, that drives a big fish crazy, makes them eat something like that. So the joint bait, that steady retrieve, that's what I would throw. Seth, are you excited to fish the Mississippi River next year for the leads? Good question. I was just going to ask you what rivers you got on your schedule.
I am excited for it. I really haven't spent more than a couple days down in the lacrosse pools. I'm going to spend a couple more days down there this fall. So, I think I'm kind of get pigeonholed as a local, even though I hardly ever fish there. But yeah, I'm excited. It's close to home. Friends and family can come to watch the weigh-in. So it should be fun. Should be a good time.
Yeah, it'll be a good one for sure. Any more rivers on the schedule, or is that?
Yeah, there's a bunch. A couple tidal ones.
What's the tidal one?
We got the Potomac and some river in South Carolina. No one's ever heard of that has 4 bass in it, but I'm gonna try to catch one.
3 of the 4 at least.
Wow, 3 would be good.
3 would be really good. All right. Good question here by John. How do you adjust to a? Oh wait, I missed the word. Chris. What average depth this time of year? That's really hard because it changes. They're all about that current stuff. So that's all subject to be whatever you're around.
Yeah, I'd say 12 foot or less. And a lot of them smaller rivers still get real deep come, later in the year, wintering time. But a lot of it's, most of your fish are going to, anytime you're on a river, 5 foot or less, really. But yeah. It'll get a little deeper later in the year, but
it goes against everything.
Shallow.
It goes against everything I preach, and especially these webinars. But some of the best river fishermen I know put like a coffee cup where their chart plotter is supposed to go up front.
Oh yeah,
they just use their rod to tell them what's there, and they just go fishing.
Yeah.
How do you adjust to a commercial river with lots of barge traffic and no backwater? Fish stray away from the bank with the traffic. A lot of times barges can make it better, actually. They really pull a lot of water when they come through. Sometimes that actually makes it a little bit better, especially if there's not a lot of backwaters. And I'm going to guess that those fish know. I mean, if there's not a lot of backwaters and there's a lot of traffic, it's no different than Lake Minnetonka or parts of the St. Croix that get, I mean, heck, I did really well in a tournament one time picking the most popular area of the St. Croix River where all the boats were and just fishing there because those fish were so acclimated, so used to having the traffic around.
Yeah,
I think it keeps the crawfish moving, the bait moving, everything.
Yeah, fish they really, they're used to their environment, and even like Lake Minnetonka, like the boat traffic actually turns them on. It's just a place they're so used to it. If you're on a place that like doesn't see any boat traffic and all of a sudden 200 boats run by, it might mess something up. But if it's anything that happens on a regular basis, those fish are used to it and probably use it to their advantage somehow.
Yeah, and again, these are feeding stations we're talking about, and I don't want to be so dramatic about it, but these fish, sometimes they can make you really feel like you're the best fisherman on the planet when you show up there, because the world could be ending on one side of the river, but they are still chewing on their side right there. I mean, you got to do a lot to really kind of funk those fish out when they're in there eating. Swim jig, slow bounce bottom or a bit faster towards the top of the column? I am going to say one thing, that depending on where you live in the country, we have a different idea of how to swim a swim jig. And it works. I've seen both ways, and I've used it different areas. But, man, a lot of times here I just like to slow retrieve, steady retrieve back, and they just ambush the crap out of that bait.
Yep. Yeah, for me up here, it's pretty much steady wind. And I know a lot of guys down south really like kind of pop their rod and swim their jig. But
kind of a different deal, though. They're fishing a lot of bank stuff.
For me, it's almost like it's kind of like a weedless swim bait with a skirt on it, essentially. I'm throwing like a boot tail swim bait on the back of most of my swim jigs, and it's just throw it out and wind it back in, not much to it.
Yeah, and our strike zone maybe here is a lot bigger than their strike zone is there. When you're seeing a lot of their fishing like tulies or whatever is coming up, and they'll have a certain amount of where that fish is going to be in the back. They want to keep their bait in there. Where a lot of times,
I think they're getting more of a reaction strike popping it, where our fish are fairly aggressive up here.
They want to eat it. Top water question: how low can water temps go and still use top water in river? Lower than you can on lakes. I'll tell you that for sure.
For sure. I don't know an exact number, but it's in the 40s for sure, especially on smallmouth, especially in the fall.
Fishing from a kayak, is it better to be in the tributaries or out in the main river? Dude, I don't know. I don't kayak much.
I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. I mean, as long as you got current, you're going to have some smallmouth. So a lot of that side channel stuff, even backwater stuff, will still have some flow in it. That's enough for fish. But definitely the later the fall goes, more fish are just going to migrate to the main river. I mean, it's just,
that's where they want to winter. Is out there.
There's some deep backwaters, largemouths will winter in, but most of them smallmouths are going to want even a little bit of flow still, even in the winter.
With little experience, Andrew's asking, with little experience on the river, what are the first things to look for when pre-fishing for tournaments, especially in the spring?
Spring's a little bit different deal. Largemouth, they're basically going to go to the warmest water, out away from the current shallow, dark bottom stuff. If you can find some pads growing up in there, it's a bonus.
Spring, a lot of times you're talking about flooding.
Flooding water,
so water clarity is going to be important. Trying to find an area that's got a little bit cleaner water than the rest.
Clear, warm water is going to be the deal in the spring.
And not too much current. In the spring, you can have too much current.
Yeah.
So then those secondary channel stuff that have a little bit more controlled areas for those fish are going to be better than completely blown out on the main river. What type of trailer do you like on your swim jig?
I throw a boot tail swim bait on the back of my swim jig most of the time. Sometimes a craw if I'm kind of popping it more, but it's usually just 3-4 inch swim bait on the back of my swim jig.
I definitely like the paddle tail on the back. I'll throw, I'm old school though. I like a single tail grub, especially on a river. For whatever reason, that's how I learned how to do it. I'm going to tell you, Andy's going to say
tail up. What do you got, Chad? Tail up or tail down? You're
tail
up.
I go tail down sometimes.
That's right.
I'm tail down. I'm tail down. Andy Young's always tail up, but that's the wrong way. But you can do it that way. I'm tail down for sure, but the single tail grub is killer. Again, it's just such a natural reaction, and again, no sponsor plug or nothing. That Strike King Menace, is that what it's called? The double deal. That for whatever reason that's been working good for me too. But a lot of times I'm using that more down in the south when I'm really kind of working that bait across the surface. But all in all, for me, it's either a paddle tail or a single tail grub. That's what I'm throwing on the back. What water temps do you consider to be time to do fall fishing?
It's really just the fact that it's getting colder.
I think it's more
so than the actual water temperature. As soon as that stuff's, it peaks out in the summer and kind of gets stale later in the summer, and as soon as it starts to drop and your fish are starting to put on the feed bag. We're in the North Country, so I mean our fish go semi-dormant in the winter. They got to load up pretty hard on the calories and get fat so they can make it through the winter.
Yeah, I kind of just walk outside one morning and it's windy and it's cold and the leaves are flying and I got a coffee and I'm
the first northwest wind and a little chill in the morning.
They're chilling on the river right now.
Yeah.
Is a crankbait your go-to fish for a wing dam in the spring and heavy current?
I'm hard on that jerkbait, man. Year round on them wing dams. I'm just kind of gonna fish different spots on them later in the year. You got lower water, less current. The smallmouths really load up on the front of those wing dams. And early in the spring, we're usually blowing out floods, so those eddies on the back of the wing dams are kind of the key spots. But I really like a jerkbait, especially on the fronts and the backs, and top water if they're sitting on top of the things.
And if it was a team tournament and he's throwing a jerkbait, then I'd probably follow it with a Carolina rig that time of year. Something's gonna get my bait down there and get into some of those areas and a heavier one, something I can get right in there and hold it. Is there any way to overlay the water portion of a satellite view map on Navionics maps? The land portion is nice for reference to water. Nah, that would be good, except, you could look from your phone and look at like overlays and stuff like that through Google Earth apps and all that. You can see the land, but not the water. Their maps are going to be on the water, so. I think we might be about there. Oh, good. Everyone's been coming in tail down for sure. Thank you, Andy.
There's a different action to it. Don't cater yourself.
I like that. I do like.
I think tail down kicks a little more, and I think tail up's a little more subtle. Am I right, River Rats? Okay.
Tail up gets a bit more.
Okay.
This has been very helpful. Thanks, Chad. Thank you. We appreciate it. If you catch them in a spot one day and they are gone the next, are they really gone or just shut down?
My opinion on a river, they're gone.
They're gone.
Them jokers bite.
No doubt about.
That's another thing about these wing dams. Like if you fish them in practice and fish them in I feel like there's every single time you fish a wing dam, it's different. There's different fish there, even if it's an hour or two later. That's just where covering and water comes into it. Find the one they're on at that moment. General areas will stay good. They might be up 2 or 3 wing dams or down 2 or 3 wing dams from where you found them in practice. But just covering water is a big deal come tournament day. Practice will get you in the right section, but like I said, every time I fish those wing dams, they're different. You might go there, catch a bunch of big ones, come back and catch a few little ones, and those big fish. And time of the day too. I think they're moving up and off of those things all day long. So timing becomes a big deal. That's just where covering water fast really helps you in this type deal.
Jerry asked, and this is an awesome question: how sensitive are fish to fronts this time of year? A lot less so sensitive to fronts than they are at lakes.
I think it makes them bite.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're talking about current.
I honestly until the rivers don't really turn over so much, but especially on the lakes, before turnover, the colder, nastier the weather gets, the better. I think. If you get those warm days, if it's been cold and blowing and windy and cloudy, they've been biting. You get a warm day, you think they're gonna bite, and that usually kind of slows them down more than anything. I think the urgency of winter kind of goes away for a day or so. And then, but after turnover, I kind of like those warm days. So, it depends on what time of the fall you're talking about. But early fall, that cold northwest cloudy is that's money.
Yeah, like today.
Yeah,
They'd have been chewing. They were 40 mile an hour wind. They were chewing out there today.
For sure.
We have Nick Dumel. Thank you. Actually, he said I know Nick, and Nick's on the BioVex team, and he's a strictly kayak fisherman. So to the question about rivers and backs, he said both. Yaks are good in both. Just get yourself an anchor system set. So take from there. We talked about that once. We had some new questions come in quick, and we're going to take a couple more. We're going to wrap it up real quick. First webinar. Thanks, guys. Hey, Rob, thank you. Tune back in. Great webinar. Thanks. Where's that one? Thanks. Samantha asked, how do you deal with quickly changing pool levels? That's probably the biggest challenge when it comes to river fishing.
They're always going up and down. Fish are going to go up and down with them. Water comes up, fish are going to move tighter in. The current breaks are going to change too, but you can almost look at them and tell which ones are going to be right. And then, water going down, fish are going to pull out too. So just know that every time the water changes 6 inches to a foot on the river, fish are going to be on different spots. It's just.
And take this for whatever it's worth. It just seems like people that grow up or just spend a lot of time fishing rivers make excellent tournament fishermen, because they don't ever it's like they don't get stuck in we can fish Lake Minnetonka every single day and get stuck in where the fish are going to be. But them river fishermen, they're big time about what those fish are doing right now. And a spot just because it's good yesterday, it will not mean it's good tomorrow. Definitely not next week, and it changes. So they're way more about what's going on right here and now, and adjusting with it for sure. And
cover water.
Kudos to the river rats for that, because it definitely makes you a better fisherman all around. One last question. What pool on the Mississippi does the good smallie bite start at? Basically from where it starts and goes down until about...
I don't even know what they call the upper Mississippi, but yeah.
It's good from roughly where it
0 through 10.
10, I was just going to say 10.
I don't know much about 10. I know 9's got them pretty good. So
I think it gets a lot of largemouth after that, but 10, Prairie du Chien, somewhere down in that neck of the woods, and
something
then
like
north, it's good.
Yep.
It's good from...
And this isn't necessarily the Mississippi River. We're talking about all the little rivers this year. This time of year are awesome, smallmouth fishing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. It can be anywhere. They're all definitely good. At that, we hope to see you at our next one in November. We're talking about drop shotting, everything about it. We're gonna get into the flip shot a little bit.
Yeah,
we might as
we got an hour to talk about drop shotting. So
you're gonna hear it all. We're gonna bring our big guns on this one. We both like to drop shot.
It might get annoying.
Yeah, definitely. I might take notes on this one. So thanks for coming in, guys. We appreciate it. And,
thanks, guys.
Take care.
See you.
See ya.